Omaha's most accurate forecast from KETV Weather Now.
Omaha's news leader, chronicling the stories and people making a difference in our community. This is KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle.
In just a little more than 1 week, voters go to the polls. Good morning, I'm Rob McCartney. Thanks for joining us for KETV News Watch 7 Chronicle. All month, we've been previewing the upcoming midterm elections. Well, in Iowa, voters will decide who to send to Congress in each of its 4 congressional districts. Today, a closer look at the race in the 4th district. As you can see, that district covers the entire western edge of Iowa, from Missouri to Minnesota, Council Bluffs to Des Moines. And these 3 candidates are fighting for your vote there. We begin with the incumbent, Republican Randy Feenstra. Feenstra grew up in Hull, Iowa, spent 12 years in the Iowa Senate before moving from the State House to the U.S. Capitol. He ousted longtime Representative Steve King in the 2020 Republican primary and then beat Democrat J.D. Scholten for the seat. We sat down with the Representative Feenstra last week to talk about what he's learned in his 2 years in Congress.
Well, the number one thing that I learned is that we have to get our fiscal house in order. We can't continue to have this out of control spending, putting all this money on our credit card. It is going to have catastrophic effects as we move forward into the future on Social Security, on Medicare, Medicaid, and obviously we're seeing that with inflation. Number 2 is we have to make sure that our agricultural community has a voice, has a seat at the table, and that's what I plan to give them. And number 3 is we got to be energy independent. We got to make sure that we're promoting biofuels that are the cleanest form of energy in our country, and making sure that we can start reducing the gas prices. And that is done by creating energy independence and not worrying about OPEC and other countries providing us with oil.
One of the biggest issues at the polls for voters this year, and pretty much every year, is the economy. With inflation jumping to more than 8% and many people worried about a recession, we asked Feenstra what he thinks Congress should be doing to get prices that you pay back down.
I tell you what, traveling all 39 counties in the 4th district, this is what I'm hearing over and over again about the rising costs of groceries, the rising cost of gas, the rising cost of inputs to our businesses, the rising costs of fertilizer for our agricultural producers. I mean, this is a really big deal. So first of all, what we need to do is get our financial spending under control. We have $31 trillion of debt. We've got to get that under control. Number 2 is we have to have energy independence. We have to reduce our gas prices, and we can do that by making sure that we embrace our ethanol and biodiesel, biofuels in this area, and then also embrace fossil fuels from our country instead of buying it from Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and relying on OPEC. We should not be doing that.
Another issue that galvanizes voters, particularly since the Dobbs ruling this summer, is abortion. We asked Feenstra if he could support a compromise on an abortion rights bill, but he says it's up to the states.
Well, I'll just say this, that I am pro-life, and that Roe v. Wade simply gave the power back to the states, and I think it's very important that each state's got to decide this issue. However, I do believe that our founding fathers in the Declaration said that we do have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's where I stand, and that's why I'm pro-life.
Major piece of legislation that passed Congress this year was the Safer Communities Act. Part of it enacted new gun control measures, including strengthening background checks. Now, Feenstra didn't vote for the bill, but signaled support for other measures like expanding access to mental health care.
I am a strong supporter of our Constitution and the Second Amendment. You know, our founding fathers said that we have the right to bear arms, we have the right to carry, and I don't want to ever infringe on those rights. I do think that we have to continue to work on creating more mental health policy when it comes to our school-aged children, when it comes to our veterans. I mean, this is where the bad situations really occurs. It's based on somebody's mental health. And that's what I want to do, is make sure that we have more dollars in mental health, and then also protect our students when they go to school. It gives dollars to school that our children can be protected when they're in school and other organizational areas.
The United States has sent billions of dollars to Ukraine to provide weapons and supplies in an attempt to help the country repel Russia's invasion. Some have said the U.S. has spent too much money given the financial situation at home. But Feenstra says the cause is something the U.S. should keep supporting.
The great thing is that we have not had one soldier on the ground in Ukraine. However, Ukraine must win. We must beat the tyrant thug Putin. And so as we get into the next legislative session, I mean, these are things that we're going to be talked about. I think we have to be fiscally responsible with the dollars that we're spending. However, we have to win this war. Ukrainians have to win this war.
This past week, the United Nations released a report saying the world is not doing enough to limit global warming in the future. When we asked Feenstra what he thinks Congress should be doing, he said one solution can be found right here in the Midwest.
Well, the biggest thing here is we have to understand that we have the cleanest form of energy in the world when it comes to our biofuels. We have that right in the Midwest. We have to embrace biofuels, whether it be ethanol or biodiesel. And then also, we have the cleanest fossil fuels anywhere in the world. I mean, we are 40 to 50% cleaner than any fuels that we're buying from Venezuela, from Saudi Arabia, or any OPEC nation. And yet we're buying this dirty, dirty fuel from these countries. Shame on America. Shame on the progressive liberal thought of this administration that wants to go down this path. We have to be energy independent, and we can do that by having the cleanest fuels ever from our great country, and biofuels and our fossil fuels.
On education, Feenstra says he supports keeping parents involved in the decision-making process rather than leaving that up to the government.
Well, the number one thing is parents need to be involved in their children's education. This is a collaborative effort to make sure that parents and children are working together with the school district. We cannot have the progressive liberal government involved in saying, hey, parents stay out. No, this is very important that we make sure our parents are very engaged in a child's education and making sure that we're teaching science, math, history, teaching the core subjects, and then also making sure that we're getting into skilled learning so we can create good paying jobs and keep our students in Iowa.
Election security is a topic that still gets a lot of feedback in the U.S. in the wake of the 2020 presidential election. But Feenstra says he has complete confidence Iowa's elections are being conducted safely and securely.
The bottom line, I was in the state senate when we passed voter ID. I'm very proud of that. I think we are one of the safest election law states in the country because we have voter ID. And I can only hope that other states go down this path. Again, this is a states' rights issue, and I can only hope that other states take it upon themselves to create voter ID.
Up next, one-on-one with the Democrat on the ticket. Ryan Melton talks about what motivated him to run for Congress and what he hopes to accomplish if he's elected. This is KETV News Watch 7 Chronicle.
Bacon is bad for your health. No, not that bacon. Done bacon is bad for your health. Bacon took almost $500,000 from the drug and insurance industries and voted their way to gut protections for pre-existing conditions, voted against lowering the cost of prescription drugs, and against allowing Medicare to negotiate lower prescription prices. It's enough to make you sick. Done bacon is dangerous for your health. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm Patty Pansing Brooks, and I approve this message. We must stop the government from extinguishing our freedoms and mandating private health care decisions. And in Congress, I'll stand up for your right to make your own health care decisions.
Not Mike Flood. He supports a government-mandated ban on abortion, even for rape or incest, jailing doctors, and even voted against protecting access to birth control. Stop Mike Flood from taking our freedoms away. What's the price of bacon? Insurance and drug industries have given nearly $500,000 to Congressman Bacon's campaigns. And what did they get? Bacon voted to give them billions in tax breaks, voted to gut protections for 700,000 Nebraskans with pre-existing conditions, and voted against letting Medicare negotiate lower prescription prices for seniors. Congressman Bacon sold out, and we paid the price. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back. Today we're talking with candidates for Congress in Iowa's 4th District. Among them, Democrat Ryan Melton. A little background, Melton was born in Omaha, went to Central High. He graduated from Iowa State in 2005, got a master's from the University of Kansas in 2008. He lives in Iowa, works for Nationwide Insurance, says he's the first person in his immediate family to graduate from college. He's a husband, father of 2. Ryan, thanks very much for being here today.
Glad to be here.
First off, just want to ask you why you're running.
Yeah, so when J.D. Sheldon announced he wasn't running for a third time in our district mid last year, initially focused on that more from a perspective of, I'm curious who's going to run next, not thinking it would be me. But by early January of this year, it became clear there was a real risk that a Democrat was not going to be in the ballot in this race. And so my wife and I had a conversation, and we resolved that that wasn't acceptable, that one of us would run, and we decided it would be me. That's the primary reason, to make sure that the voices that often go unheard in my district had someone that was running on their behalf.
So what issues are you most passionate about? Do you have a number 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, and a lot of this comes from the outreach I've done throughout the district. I've had numerous open forum events in all 36 counties of the new 4th Congressional District, and the top 3 issues that come up over and over again are protecting our public schools, pushing back against the use of eminent domain when it comes to carbon capture pipelines. That's been a really big one in our district, and reproductive rights. A lot of young people, not only young people, but especially young people in our district, are rather alarmed and frightened by the trend lines they're seeing as far as reproductive rights issues. And so, but I will say there are many more than those 3 issues. I mean, the primary animating purpose behind our campaign is a combination of doing our best to not only preserve but strengthen our representative democracy. That's the first big one. But also really addressing the root causes of the massive population declines we've been seeing in rural Iowa for decades now, that really leave our schools, businesses, hospitals, and really our communities vulnerable.
So what can you do to change that? I mean, if you have people leaving the rural lifestyle for the cities, I mean, that's been an ongoing problem. What can you do with Congress?
Yeah, I think the issue is it's being amplified. It's being amplified by policy decisions on the ground. So a lot of our young people at our events tell me they want to stay, they want to build their family where they grew up, but they feel like they don't have the socioeconomic support needed to build families that can thrive. So we've got major problems with affordable, accessible childcare. We've got major problems with rural hospitals closing. A lot of our counties in the district don't even have a single OBGYN. We have a lack of well-paying jobs that are driving young people away. We don't have the robust internet in rural Iowa that allows them to take advantage of the burgeoning work-from-home economy. Housing costs are going up. And then the socio piece of it, whether it be members of our LGBTQ plus community, people of color, women, they're feeling threatened. They feel at risk right now by a lot of the policy choices that are being made by people that are representing them in DC and Des Moines, and so I want to push back against that.
The economy drives a lot of elections. We've got inflation topping 8%, now 8.3%. What's your plan to fight back on that?
Yeah, number one, very similar to what the UK Parliament actually did earlier this year. I'm in support of passing a windfall tax on excessive profit during times of inflation for select industries. We've done this before in our history, and we've seen that corporations have raked in massive profits during this time of inflation. That's number one. Also, there's a big issue with corporate consolidation of power. This is impacting our farmers on the ground, both on the input side and output side. We have antitrust instruments that people are hesitant to use, but are on the books for a reason. And so we also need to do a better job of more robustly funding our public health infrastructure too, because our current inflationary situation was brought about because of the COVID pandemic. And this is unfortunately not going to be the last pandemic we go through. We also need to start building more things at home again. The fact that we're so reliant on an international interlocked web of supply chains really leaves us vulnerable as well. So it's a multifaceted issue. Speaking about childcare earlier, there was one recent study done that found that if we closed our childcare gaps in our country, that would free up to 1 million more people to work that wish to do so but currently can't because of childcare affordability and accessibility issues. And that would really provide a robust boost to our supply chains as well. So it's a multifaceted issue for sure.
Pew Research Center earlier this year had a study on the issues most important to Americans. Number 2 was affordable health care.
Yeah.
I mean, number 1 is obviously strengthening the economy.
Yep.
What's your plan for health care? I mean, you mentioned it.
I'm a believer in a single-payer universal health care plan like Medicare for all. You talk to hospital administrators, doctors in rural Iowa, and they'll tell you, they spend hours upon hours haggling with private insurance companies trying to get approvals for very basic but vital treatments for their patients. There are so many obstacles between patient and provider right now that are making it especially hard, that really disincentivize the planting of new mental health clinics or public health clinics in rural Iowa. And so the CBU has done the math on this. We'd save a lot against GDP, actually, if we went to a single-payer universal health care plan. I firmly believe in that as far as my vision for public health care.
What's your stance on Social Security? I mean, should we strengthen it? Should we preserve it? Should we move the retirement age back?
I'm not in favor of lifting the retirement age. I think that that's a vital public service for our people. We should not mess with the retirement age. In my opinion, what we should do is we should raise the cap as far as the amount of income that can be taxed at to make sure we're properly funding the Social Security fund. It's well under where the target should be, in my opinion. So, but no, it's a vital benefit that our people have been working for and they deserve.
Your thoughts on election security? A lot of talk about that, whether our elections are safe and secure. Are they?
They are. They absolutely are. There were dozens and dozens of cases in which the Trump administration tried to challenge the election results. Many brought before Trump-appointed judges. And he lost those challenges over and over and over again because they were secure elections. It was a legitimate election. I'm a big believer that if you are a public official and you know that the election was secure, and yet you continue to disseminate lies and misinformation about it, which literally damages our democracy, that there should be legal guardrails in place to prevent those kinds of things. We've heard through the January 6th committee that Donald Trump's inner circle was telling him over and over again that the election was legitimate, and yet he persisted. And so I think that's a vital interest and would be a top priority for me if I had the honor of being elected.
All right, Ryan, appreciate you coming in today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
And still to come, the third candidate in the race, Brian Jack Holder, joins us. He's with the Liberty Caucus Party, and we'll hear his top issues. First, what are your thoughts on the election? Concerns for the issues facing the 4th District? Email those to us. The address, news@ketv.com. Love hearing from you, and we'll be right back.
Don't let allergies ruin your child's Halloween. Monday at First News, how to make sure all their candy is treats they can eat.
Monday on First News.
I'm Soledad O'Brien. This week on Matter of Fact,
we're back on the road, traveling I-70 through Middle America, asking voters what matters most to them as they head to the polls.
Matter of Fact, today at 10:30 a.m. on KETV.
Tony Vargas is tough on cops, but not on crime. I've been in law enforcement for over 22 years. I wanted to be out there helping people. The rise in 2020 was very, very tough. There was businesses being destroyed. It was a very dangerous situation. The police do not need two big politicians like Tony Vargas attacking them when they're just trying to do their job. Tony Vargas would fit right in with the radicals in Washington that are soft on crime and want to defund the police. He voted for early release of violent felons and against tougher penalties for drug dealers. Tony Vargas doesn't get it. He'd be a disaster in Washington.
NRCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
We know how politics works. The other side's trying to make me seem scary, dangerous, and too extreme. The truth, my dad is a taxi driver, and my mom worked the factory line. And I'm a former science teacher who's changed more diapers than I can count. In Lincoln, I lowered healthcare costs, voted for 2 of the largest property tax cuts in state history. The fact that I do what's right for you and not any party is pretty scary to them. I'm Tony Vargas, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle. We continue our conversations with the candidates for Congress in Iowa's 4th District. Brian Jack Holder is the Liberty Caucus candidate. Holder grew up in Crescent, lives in Council Bluffs, got his law degree from Creighton University in 1998 after getting degrees from Iowa Western and Bellevue University. He's a videographer and citizen journalist. Mr. Holder, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
You bet. First, I got to ask you, why are you running?
I'm running just to give people another choice and another voice in the political process. Oftentimes people complain about their lack of choices and the two parties, and I'm here to offer them a third alternative.
So what are your top agenda items? You have the top three?
The very first one I've been advocating for 8 years is smaller congressional districts. It's been nearly 100 years since they stopped adding seats, and states like Iowa have gone from 11 districts down to 4 now. States like Nebraska have never had more than 3 representatives. So I advocate for dividing the districts into 3 smaller ones.
What about the economy? Economy drives many elections. We have the inflation rates now 8.2, 8.3%. You have a plan to bring that under control?
Well, what needs to happen is we need to examine our system of money and the Federal Reserve System and the way that everything is based upon debt. So, the debtors, people that buying homes, financing their cars, their colleges, they're sort of at the mercy of the interest rates. And so everything we can do to bring those interest rates down so it's not so cost prohibitive to get loans.
Do you have an idea how to bring those interest rates down?
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of money in the federal budget that can be reappropriated to things that help the people here in America out. There's, billions of dollars in foreign aid, especially what's going on now with the conflict in Ukraine. We've spent over $50 billion of our dollars overseas, and that money should be used for the people back here to benefit our lives.
Actually, along those lines of the budget, you told the Des Moines Register, Congress has a duty to provide oversight to agencies receiving tax money and must root out all corruption. Do you have any specific examples of corruption?
Well, there's sort of been a revolving door, and I'm sure this isn't new, from people in Congress and their staffers going and becoming lobbyists for different industries and organizations. And we know that the squeaky wheel there gets the grease. And, oftentimes those major corporations are getting the money, and us average folk are not getting the help that we need.
There's a big issue is climate change in an agricultural district. That is a hot topic. What's your stance on that?
Well, I'm a conservationist. I want us to have clean air and clean water and clean living. But, it's become so highly polarized that the scientists are even arguing amongst themselves. So I know that man-made climate change, there is things happening, but the sun and the solar cycles also have a significant effect. So what is the balance between what is affecting the climate and the weather? And we need to get some straight answers.
Your assessment of what happened at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, how would you assess that or characterize it? And what, if any, punishment should there be for the people involved?
I think it was a horrible tragedy, and it just it shows how fragile that our system of government can be, especially when there's people on the fringes that are totally have divorced themselves from being engaged in the political process. So those people that hurt officers and others should face the fullest extent of the law. But the people that are unhappy with the way government works, I wish they'd grab a clipboard and run for office like so many of us has, because I think that's a better use of our frustration, a better outlet for it.
Gotcha. Your thoughts on this summer's Dobbs ruling that with overturning Roe v. Wade?
Well, it's going to go back to the states, and so this argument, this battle that has played out for about 3 generations now, it's going back to the states where it'll be decided at the state level. And I think that's where this needs to be. Anytime you nationalize an issue like that, it really makes it difficult to come to a consensus.
The gun bill that was passed this year, the Safer Communities Act, did that go far enough, do you think, or would you go even further?
Well, it all depends on what kind of restrictions that the constituents want to have in their local area, their state, and nationwide. Definitely we need to get the mental health help to those people that are in need of assistance. There's too many of our youth, especially young men, that are troubled and they lash out, and that shouldn't happen in the first place. And anyone that does need help should get the help from the high school guidance counselors, other mental health professionals in the community.
And speaking of high school and education, what's your plan for education? Do you have a plank on that?
In terms of education, I think there should be more competition. Part of the problem why higher education is so expensive is that us as taxpayers, the government subsidizes those loans and a lot of those grants. So, but like I said before, there's plenty of money in the budget to help the people here to get ahead, to get their college education, or if they don't go to college, to get trade and vocational school financed.
What's your stance on Social Security? Should we protect it? Should we move the retirement age back?
I think we should definitely protect it. There have been so many promises made by politicians in the past to current and future beneficiaries of Social Security. We need to maintain the social safety net. You can't have the most prosperous country in the world with people homeless and living on the street. So there's definitely need to strengthen it and improve it. But like I said, I'm sure there's other areas of the budget where we can trim some fat and send it to where it's needed.
We only have a couple moments left. I wanted to ask you, the 4th District, majority Republican, rest are mostly Democrats. What are your odds as a Liberty Caucus candidate?
Well, in an alternate reality, I would be elected, and then I would take Democrat Ryan Melton and Republican Randy Feenstra to Washington with me, and we all three would help represent the 36 counties in this district. It's a vast, huge district, and I think there should be representatives at the county level that help the U.S. representative out.
All right, Brian Jack Holder, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Rob.
You bet. Remember, if you missed any part of the show, if you want to watch it again, it and all KETV News Watch 7 reports are available on the very local app. That's free. Get it wherever you get your apps. Next week, our in-depth interviews with the 3 people who want to be Nebraska's next governor. I'm Rob McCartney. Thanks for watching. See you back here next Sunday morning for KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle.
Commitment 2022. Your voice, your vote. Complete campaign coverage in both Iowa and Nebraska. Your trusted source for election coverage.
From the issues to the candidates, how will they impact our community?
We're here to help you make an informed decision.
KETV News Watch 7 gets the answers for you. The election coverage you trust. Commitment 2022 on KETV News Watch 7, Omaha's news leader.
What's the price of bacon? Insurance.